An emergency meeting between the Department of Water and Sanitation today and Johannesburg Water is scheduled. This comes after, of course, Rand Water implemented what they are calling level 2 water restrictions in Gauteng. And that's exactly perhaps what we need to deal with at the moment because, of course, as you know, first it was the electricity and now water. We're not guaranteed our taps will run without disruption for the next 2 weeks. Rand Water instituting flow control measures, and they've reduced flow by 30% in the major metros, Joburg, Ekurhuleni and Tshwane. Professor Anthony Turton is a water expert and joins us now on the line. He's with the University of Free State, the Center for Environmental Management there. Professor Turton, I was reflecting on how you and I first spoke probably around 2007, 2009 thereabouts, and you warned this day would come.
Yes, good morning to you. I recall that conversation very well because remember I was still pulling your leg about certain items that we won't mention on the air here. Yes, water and energy have got similarities in that both of them flow. And when they flow, they also need to be stored. So just like electricity has got batteries for storage, in the case of water, you have reservoirs which are really like batteries for storage. And when your batteries are flat and you don't have enough storage capacity, then you run out of resilience. And when the pawpaw hits the fan, you are unable to provide your service.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a layman's description of where we are today.
Load shedding and the recent heat wave are being blamed. Do you accept that?
Well, yes, load shedding is without any question of doubt the cause of this. The heat wave is not really the driver. It's merely an exacerbating factor. The driver is the fact that there's been a general movement of people into the Gauteng area over the last couple of decades. And there's been no improvement in the infrastructure to meet that. So we've run the resilience of the system down. The batteries in the system that I mentioned, they are now flat. We've run out of storage capacity. And so now when you get this exacerbating factor, the heat wave, on top of a load shedding, basically the system crashes.
Those challenges notwithstanding, are residents to blame though? Because you could also make a case around the maintenance of aging infrastructure, the leaking pipes, poor maintenance, and of course lately we're seeing vandalism and theft.
Yes, but you can't blame the residents for that. You see, this is where I take great issue with any government entity that blames the consumer. I see that there's a message being put out now that we are amongst the biggest per capita use of water in the world. That is not factually correct because that number includes the leakages in the system. So, the reason why we can't blame the consumer is because then we start alienating the consumer. And when we need them to cut back on it, they no longer believe the message. So it's of course we must be responsible with our water, but we can't just shift the blame to somebody else. It doesn't work like it.
I understand that, Prof, but what I'm asking is how much of the situation we are dealing with now, due to the fact that we have not maintained our existing infrastructure, a lot of the water gets wasted through leakages, and we're not dealing with that. The poor maintenance schedules and plans. How much is all of that the contributing factor rather than our misuse of water?
That's all the contributing factor because we're losing, on average, some of the parts of the country lose as much as 60% of the water. Gauteng, it's a little bit just below 50% of the water is lost. So every 100 litres of water that Rand Water puts in the pipe, only 50 comes out the other side. And then that 50 is not enough for everybody, you see. So obviously it's maintenance is by far the biggest issue. But the problem now is that there's been such an underspend on your capital infrastructure upgrade for decades now that it's almost impossible to play catch up now. So we're going to live with this thing now for the next few decades. We cannot turn around.
Gosh, Rand Water says all of this is partly to avoid a total collapse of the system. Are we that close?
Yes, I'm part of a professional group that advises risk into the big corporates, etc. And with that group, absolutely, we are on the brink of total systemic failure in South Africa. Not only of the energy system, but also of your water and reticulation systems. And we're also starting to see instability in things like internet and that kind of thing. So yes, we are dangerously close to total systemic failure in South Africa.
Are we on top of it? Will we solve it? Or is this going to become another ESCOM, something we just simply have to adapt to?
What is, we are on top of it to a certain extent. There is resilience coming in from the private sector, but ultimately there's certain things that the private sector cannot do. The private sector cannot provide an alternative a source of water. They simply can't do that. They can, to a certain extent, that you can take yourself off the grid on the energy side, but you still can't, you can't do it properly. So ultimately, the bottleneck is around the role of the state. And we hope that the state is going to come to the party at some point in time, because as it is, it's currently unsustainable. So before it collapses, hopefully we can now have a renegotiated way forward, or there's going to be a collapse, survive the collapse, and then pick up the pieces thereafter. But I don't see any other outcome at this moment in time other than total systemic failure.
Right, on that encouraging note, thank you for your time, Professor Anthony Turton there, water expert at the Centre for Environmental Management at the University of the Free State. Yeah, we outsourced security, right? We privatized security. We hire security companies instead of the police. We rely on private medical health care, many of us in the middle class, instead of using public health systems. We send our kids to private schools. I'm afraid, though, there's no such thing as private water, KG. There's no such thing as private water.
Current events, developing stories,
tough questions.
Your voice making a difference.
This is Breakfast with Bongani Bingwa.